one of these discussion topics that we could fill a day if we had a day. We've run out of time. I think it feels like it's probably been one of the quickest conversations we've had in our fireside chats. I normally try to do a kind of a 1 minute or a minute and a half, very quick summary to catch some of the key points. So I might try that if I may. We started just discussing the idea of happiness versus wellness. And I think we broadly concluded they're two sides of the same coin. They go hand in glove. But that brought us into asking about the idea of happiness comes from relative thinking. So if you have a point of comparison, then your assessment of your own happiness may fundamentally change and fundamentally alter. I suppose that makes it a requirement then to look as much inward as outward, because if you only exclusively look outward for comparison, you may miss a whole lot of internal reasons to be or to feel happy. And Isabella, I think you made that particular point, but you also made the point at the same time that it's an evolutionary thing. It's a life cycle thing, that we don't necessarily come to that conclusion until we've been around a couple of blocks of happiness and perhaps unhappiness before we discover that we need to look equally inside as outside to arrive at our own sense of that wellness. That brought us into a discussion about culture, which brought us to a national level discussion. And then we moved into an organization focused culture. Paulo, you made two really interesting points about how we measure this. And you referred to the USA organization of psychology from 2000 that started looking at the individual measurement. And then 2010, the HBR articles that now started to look at the organizational value, economic value that can be put on wellness or well-being. That's brought us into the area of, so at national level, how might we go about measuring it? And Obhi, you made reference to Bhutan's, where they have a number of key metrics. They've got 4 pillars, they've got 9 themes on which they actually try to make that measurement. I do know just from personal background reading and stuff, New Zealand has something similar. I'm just not familiar with the detail of that. That, I suppose, then brings us into, so at a national level of well-being, what can governments actually do? And Paul, you posed the question provocatively to us and absolutely bang on to say the unhappiness drivers. What might those unhappiness drivers be? And how do we avoid them? How do we stay away from them? 2 points arose there, is this sense of security. And the second thing was closeness to nature. And the final word, Paulo, I'm leaving it to your good self, in the concept of sharing gratitude. If we were to identify one thing that actually promotes happiness stroke well-being in both the giver and the receiver, it's expression, direct, overt expression and sincere expression of gratitude. And maybe that's something when we step back and look at our current society ills, maybe if we expressed a bit more gratitude and maybe a bit less expectation or belief in entitlement, maybe the wellness quotient or the happiness quotient might increase substantially. I'll leave it at that, Paul, if you wanted to round us up.